So I thought that I will cover this topic. And yeah, we will have the same format. What we'll be doing is we will be first having a session for around 30-35 minutes. I mean, I won't like to call it as a session. It'll be more as my viewpoints, which I'll try to share with all of you. And then what will happen is then I will open the floor for question and answers. Yeah, feel free to come on a camera. If you find it okay, do feel free to come on a camera. I'll be more than happy to have you on a camera and have this discussion, right? Yeah, and of course there will be some portion which we already know on celebrating failure. There are a lot of talks on this also which are there, but the main intent of this session is to tell you some of the tools, right? Some of the very important tools related to how do we measure failure, or if I want to create an environment where failure is something which is captured and measured, how do we measure that failure? So that also I'll be talking about as we move along the journey. Yeah. So about myself, I think majority of you already know. I mean, a lot of people I know here already know about me. Ashutosh Bhattodekar here, working as an enterprise agile coach, a trainer, and a consultant. And yeah, these are my social media connects. So feel free to connect with me on social media. I'll be more than happy to be connected on LinkedIn and interact with you further. And yes, I mean, this video as we speak is being broadcasted live on YouTube. It is also broadcasted live on Facebook Live as we speak, right? So welcome to the audience from all the platforms, wherever you have joined this video from. All right. So let us try to put in context what exactly do we mean by celebrating failure. And I just wanted to quickly check with the team here. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever heard this term celebrating failure? And what according to you does it mean? What according to you this term celebrate failure means? And you can put it on the chat box. I will have a look at the chat box, and I'll also share my opinion. Yeah. So what according to you is this celebrate failure? I mean, we all know about success, right? Celebrating success. But what is this celebrating failure all about? What is this celebrating failure all about? Any thoughts on celebrating failure? Yeah, I do see a chat box. The term is new to me. Okay, the term is new to you. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's a paradoxical term, right? I mean, at one point we say we have failed. We have failed in something which we are trying to do, and at some time, what we are saying is that we should be celebrating it. We should be celebrating a failure as a result of it. So it's a very paradoxical statement, right? Celebrating failure. And yes, I mean, first time when I also heard it, I was a little confused. What exactly does it mean, celebrating failure? Or how can you celebrate a failure in first place, right? I mean, it is something wrong which has happened. And how do we go about and celebrate a failure as such, right? Yes, obviously it is coming from the fail fast and learn from it. The term is coming from there only. Fail fast principle of agile. So fail fast, and so you learn quickly from it, and then you celebrate failure. Okay, so some hall of failures, some very interesting personalities there, global personalities. Walt Disney. So he was actually fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination and having no original idea. You know what Walt Disney did, right? He went on to create those very iconic cartoon characters. And here was a feedback given to him that he lacks imagination, having no original ideas which are there. Oprah Winfrey was demoted from a job as a news anchor because she wasn't fit for television. She went on to create that very famous show, right? The Oprah Winfrey Show. Beatles, they were rejected by Decca Recording Studios because they had no future in the show business. And here you have them creating one of the very iconic groups in music. Michael Jordan was distraught as a teenager when he was cut from the high school basketball team. He went on to be one of the best basketball players in the world. And last but not the least, Steve Jobs. At the age of 30, his life was devastated when he was removed from the company he started, right? Yeah, so he started his own company, Apple, but he was removed from that organization, right? So yeah, some very interesting examples we have, right, in the hall of failures, right? People who were failed earlier, who were regarded as failure earlier, And then they went on to create some iconic products, iconic TV shows, iconic characters, iconic music bands, or become one of the greatest footballers in the world, right? So this is what we call as the failure, right? And celebrating failure in that sense is about learning from it, as you rightly said, right? Fail fast, fail fast and learn something from it quickly, right? So the joke around celebrating failure is that, I mean, this is a joke in a parlance in the corporate world, that you should not repeat the same mistakes again, right? Do not repeat the same mistake again. You always have a right to make a new mistake, but do not repeat the same mistake again and again, right? Because that clearly tells you that you are not in that learning zone. You are not really concerned about the learning zone, or you're not really talking about the learning activity. So that's what we call it as celebrating failure, right? Or how do we learn from our failure? How do we use failure to our advantage? And we learn from it, and we come out with something very, very important for our growth as a individual, or a growth as a leader in our engagement. All right. So some very interesting story. I mean, from a Russian pole vaulter, 2 times Olympic gold medalist, 2004 and 2008, and 3 times world champion. So this is a story of 2004 Olympics. So in the final, she had 2 failed attempts of 4.75 meters. And third failure at that height would have made her out of the event. Forget medals, she would have been out of that event. You know what she did? She learned from that failure and she decided to raise the bar to 4.80. So she said, no, the third attempt which I'm going to make, even though I have failed the first 2 attempts at 4.75 meters, the third attempt which I'm going to target is 4.80. She cleared it and she won the gold medal. I mean, this is a classic example of learning from your failure, right? Third attempt, she would have been out of of a medal. Forget a gold medal. Even she would not have received a bronze medal in that situation. But she went on and she raised the bar. She challenged herself and she said, I'm going to raise the bar. And she cleared the bar and she went on to win the gold medal in that event, right? So another example, another interesting example of celebrating failure, what we have. And then, of course, we have the very famous example of Thomas Alva Edison. Just to let you know, he took almost 1001 attempts to create a bulb under which I'm talking right now. The device under which all of us are right now reading this presentation, the electricity bulb, a normal electricity bulb or a light bulb as it is called, it took him almost 1000 times. And he goes on to say that I have not failed, but I have known 1000 times how not to create a bulb. I know 1000 ways in which a bulb should not be created, right? So there's nothing called as failure. What we have is a first attempt in learning, as our ex-president of India used to say, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. It is first attempt in learning. It's not fail. It is not a fail, FAIL. It is first attempt in learning what we have. And that's what we call it as a failure. So when you're building in a culture, when we as coaches, transformation agents, when we go into an organization and we build in a culture of failure, what is that most important thing what is needed? I mean, what is that support you need? Of course, you need support from the management, but what is that most important thing what is needed? Anyone would like to add here? I mean, if at all you want to implement failure, because remember, it's a culture change. It's a mindset change. People are not going to immediately accept it at a face value, right? So they are going to not immediately accept failure. They are going to take a lot of time to understand what this culture is all about. So what exactly is the most important thing which is required at failure perspective, or for to bring about this culture? Any thoughts? Anyone, any thoughts? What exactly is the most important thing as a coach we should be concerned about? Yeah, another example is J.R. Rowling. It is on the LinkedIn. I can see that. Yeah, another example I can see. Yeah, I think one person from LinkedIn has posted it. Thanks a lot. I cannot see the name of the person, but I will see it later. No worries. Okay. Yeah. What is the most important thing? What is the most important thing for us to build a culture of failure? Because obviously, if you try to put this in the leadership on a Monday, there will be a pushback. They will say, no, it doesn't work. I mean, failure is a failure, right? I mean, we have an appraisal, we have turnover of the company, we have business environment, right? So how can you say that failure is actually good, right? And I'm sure you will get into a lot of resistance. Even you as coaches will get into a lot of resistance, lot of, I would say, pushback, which will come from the team. So what exactly is this, what I'm talking about? What exactly is this from a failure perspective I'm talking about? The most important thing is, yeah, we need an open culture for sure. We definitely need a culture of openness, but the most important thing what we have to build is psychological safety, right? So what is psychological safety? Psychological safety, if my organization or if my engagement is a psychologically safe engagement, I can actually take risks. I can experiment. I can do some experiments without the fear of being ridiculed, without the fear of being looked down upon, or without the fear of any negative consequences, be it related to image, status, or my career. So that's called as a psychological safety. So we need to have a very strong psychologically safe culture in our team. And this term, of course, was introduced by Amy Edmondson in her book, who coined this phrase. And basically, she talked about this, that it is a shared belief held by members or team that the team is safe to take risks. So I need to, as a leader, first of all, I need to build a psychological safety culture. And my experience has been that it has to be built from top, right? Not from the bottom. It has to be a top-down approach. First of all, we will have to coach our leaders that are they ready for this? Are they willing to work on this experimentation? Are they willing to actually give that cushion or that safety net? So the leadership has to provide that safety net or a cushion, so that even if I fall under that cushion, there is someone to back me up, right? Tomorrow, it should not happen that I am ridiculed for it, right? I'm ridiculed for taking this decision. Like if you would have seen in any espionage serial and all, right, or any detective serial, the police, when they make an encounter, before that they take a bind. They say that, okay, if something wrong happens, we need your support from the commissioner of police, right? So we need that backup from your side, right? Otherwise, we are not going ahead with this encounter. So something similar. Before I build in the safety culture, is my leadership willing to protect the team? Is my leadership there to provide that cushion or that safety net? Otherwise, this will just remain on paper. This is something which will just remain on paper, and it will just be of an academic interest without any real time, I would say, benefit seen on the ground, right? Yes, I mean, I do have a video, a separate video on what is psychological safety. Feel free to watch it on the YouTube channel. So there's a YouTube channel where you will find almost in 90 plus videos now. So there is a video on psychological safety, a detailed video around, I think, 30-35 minute session, which is there. That's where I cover this slide in particular detail. What exactly are the levels of psychological safety? How do we go about and measure the psychological safety of teams? And how do we bring about a culture which is psychologically safe? Now, there's a very interesting project which was done by Google also. Okay, and this was a project which ran across for almost 2 years. For almost 180 plus teams they had, and they identified 5 traits. And this was basically almost consisted of 200 plus interviews with various stakeholders. And the primary motive of this was that why some teams excelled, whereas some teams faltered, right? So even in a organization like Google, this was a problem, that there were some teams which were really excelling themselves well. They were really outperforming themselves. So whatever targets they had, they were actually outperforming themselves. Well, there were some teams which actually strutted along the way. And one of the top reasons was psychological safety, or the presence of psychological safety. And these teams tend to be vulnerable. They tend to be vulnerable in front of each other. So they are not afraid of what will people say if I utter this word in a meeting, or will people ridicule me? Will they actually make a fun of me or make a mock me in front of others? So team members feel safe to take risks, and they become vulnerable, and they're vulnerable in front of each other. The second most important trait was dependability. So if I am taking up a job, my leader is fully dependable on that, and the leader trusts me that yes, I will get the job done. So that's the dependability part of what we have, right? So that comes in dependability. Then we have clear-cut rules and responsibilities defined. I clearly know what I'm going to do in the project. The other team members also clearly know what they are going to do in the project. So there's a dependability, there's a structure and clarity and meaning. I feel motivated. Work is personally important to me and important to all the team members. And at the end of the day, last but not the least is the impact. So whatever I'm doing, it is creating an impact. At the end of the day, it is growing my organization. It is making my organizations grow as a whole. So that's what Google learned from this project Aristotle. And one very interesting thing which came out also was that gone are the days when IQ was the criteria. Today, the world lives on EQ or emotional quotient, right? So how strong is my emotional quotient? That is something what is going to decide me as a leader, right? Rather than blindly relying on IQ tests in hiring, I would rather check the EQ or the emotional quotient of my team members, because that's what is important in today's VUCA world or the Bani world, as they say. There's a new term, by the way, called Bani also. I mean, that's another term which they use. But in today's VUCA world or the Bani world, this is what stays, or this is what makes or break a high performing team, which means that you have a psychologically safe environment, you have an emotionally strong team which is there. Okay, so this is what Google also learned from this situation. And yes, they did create opportunities for celebrating failures, right? And I'll talk about it. What exactly do we mean by celebrating failures? How we should be celebrating failure? There are different techniques, there are different tools by which we can celebrate failure. Okay, so when I implemented this, obviously the first thing was we had the psychological safety assessment. It was a qualitative measure, it was a quantitative measure. We had an action plan which came out of the psychological safety test. So we designed a questionnaire similar to the Agile maturity assessment. And this question was done in an anonymous way, Delphi technique, which means we don't do this question in a group. Each team member, one-on-one we try to record the observations, and then we tabulate a report and we publish to the team. And the score basically comes on a scale of 5 or on a scale of 10, right? So that's how the psychological safety score comes. And that tells us whether the team is really vulnerable. Are they challenging themselves? Are they in a mode of experimentation, or they want to be in that static fixed mindset? That is what this score is going to indicate, right? So maybe, yes, I will take a video on that or a session on that on some other day, some other time. But coming back to celebrate failure, how did I implement in few of the engagements? Let us now deep dive into some of the tools which I used. Okay, and then there is towards the end of this session, there is another very interesting tool from Management 3.0, which many of us would have used, or I would definitely recommend to use this tool if you have not yet used that tool. But let me first start with the very simplistic tools, some tools which you can start implementing right from day one. Okay, right from day one, you can start implementing these tools. And I mean, yes, I mean, there are some strange names of these tools, what you will see now, but nevertheless, they are very effective. They are very effective in capturing the failures and building about a culture of learning in our teams. Okay, so the first tool which we have is the tool which is called as wall of failure. So just like we have a success wall, we actually establish a wall of failure, and it is an open wall. It is an open wall. Initially we said that, okay, you can be anonymous. So if you want to write something about your failure story, write it down there. Okay, what was the failure all about? What mistake you made? And what was the key learning from that mistake? What is the key lesson learned from that failure? And how are you going to avoid this repeating the mistake again? See, this served as a very good database. So any other team member who was doing this, any other team member who was working on this, he could easily go onto the wall of failure and look at it. Like, I'll give an example. So when clients visited for the first time, there were some things which did not go as per the plan, like the cab did not come to pick them up, or let us say that they reached the office late because of some XYZ reason. Though that thing, and there was a coordinator who was managing all these things, right? One coordinator from the project team also was managing, and he had put in on the wall of failure what went wrong. What went wrong in this? So next time when the client visited, what they did was they first looked at this wall of failure, and based on that, they took a precautionary action. So it's like your risk database. Your wall of failure is nothing but like your risk database, which will tell you which things are going on well, or which things rather are not going on well, and what are the corrective or preventive actions you should be taking, right, in order to avoid this repeating this mistake in future. So that's one interesting tool. What is their wall of failure? The second is failure awards. Okay, I know it sounds very crazy. It sounds very, I would say, controversial, but trophy for the most compelling failure story. The whole idea is that we are recognizing failure as a step in learning, right? And this requires a lot of courage for people to come. In fact, first time when we launched it, there was 0 nominations. No one was interested to talk about failure. Then we actually had a prize. We actually incentivized it, which is what I'll talk about in the next slide. So we actually incentivized this and said that this is actually a good thing to have. We'll give you, let's say, 1,000 rupees for the most compelling failure story. And you know what? People started slowly trickling in. They started presenting them. So the format was like this, that you have to write your story in a Word document for 100 to 500 words. So I think it was 200 to 500 words. Yeah. And then it will go to a jury. The jury will pick up the most compelling failure story. And then the jury is going to decide which story is the most compelling failure story which is there, and that was getting awarded. Okay, as I said, first time we launched this failure itself was a failed event, right? Because no one turned up. They said no, we cannot do this. And I mean, what if people will use this data? I mean, there are a lot of concerns people have, right? What if this data can be used against my appraisal, right? Appraisal time is there. Probably our timing was wrong. It was just launched before the appraisal season, and obviously we got a pushback from our team. But later on, when we launched it around a festival time, we said that, okay, before we go into our festive time, let us go on a clean slate and let us come back on a clean slate and then try to start the journey afresh, right? So that is where we had launched this failure awards, or the failure story, what we call it. All right, so that was another thing which was there, the failure award or the failure story. And then, as I said, incentivize failure, which means recognize the fact that failure is a positive way, not through humiliation. So we called it as increased CTC. CTC is not cost to company. Okay, many of you would have thought that increased CTC means cost to the company. No, it definitely increased the CTC, but it increased the CTC of the person who failed. So the rule in our team was that whoever wants to present a failure story, first of all, this person has to give us, all of us, a coffee or a tea, whatever we like. So it was a coffee time chat, which was sponsored by the person who failed. And in the coffee time chat, it was more like an informal setting, right? I mean, you don't have to go into a meeting room for this. You can go to your office cafeteria, sit at a place where other people, onlookers, don't look at you. The person who's presenting the failure story will sponsor the coffee. Okay, and we made it only coffee and biscuits, not even snacks. Okay, so coffee and biscuits will be sponsored by that person, and he or she will articulate their failure story, what went wrong, right? And this actually enriched the knowledge base of the team, right? So remember, when we talk about knowledge management, we always go by that explicit mode of knowledge management, that we should have a knowledge sharing session, we should have a team meeting, we should have a webinar like this, where the person who has the knowledge will share. But this is a tacit knowledge. This is a way of increasing your tacit knowledge. Remember, there are two types of knowledge management: explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is something which you have to extract or pull from the team or from the team member, right? So if you want to know from me, let's say I have got some knowledge on a topic and I'm not expressing, or I'm not in a mood to actually share that knowledge with you. I come to a webinar, but I just vaguely talk about it and move away. There are techniques by which you can extract that knowledge from my mind, right? There are tools and techniques from coaching which will help you to extract that knowledge, and that is called as a tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is something which is not visible. It is something which is hidden in my mind, and it has to be pulled out, right? That knowledge has to be extracted, or that knowledge has to be pulled out from the individual. So that's a tacit knowledge, what we call. Right. So this was the second thing what we did. And the third thing was LTD, lunchtime desserts. That also we introduced, that the person who fails or who has a failure story to present, he or she will, I mean, we kept a date as Friday. I mean, of course, this is all pre-COVID example. What we have, the lunchtime desserts will be sponsored by that person. And it's not just the dessert, he or she will have to present his or her failure story. Some tips. We also encourage people to give tips, that tomorrow, if I'm traveling through the same road, I should not again stumble upon that roadblock. So give us some tips, give us some techniques by which we can avoid this in future. What are the checks and balances we need to take to avoid this? So that was the LTD initiative or the lunchtime desert, which was there. So this is how, I mean, this is of course an incentive for us, not for the poor person who failed. But for the previous one, definitely was an incentive for that person. Failure awards, wall of failure, right? Those were definitely incentives for them. And these were the incentives for people who are willing to learn how not to, again, go through that route, right? How exactly to avoid failure or how exactly to prevent going through that same route is what came out as a part of incentivized failure story, which was there. All right, let us move ahead. Let us move ahead with some other techniques which is there. Now, this is a tool which can be used for multiple purposes. Has anyone seen this tool, Celebration Grid? Okay, has anyone seen this tool, the Celebration Grid, by any chance? Anyone who has done Management 3.0 certification will be aware about this tool. Now, this is a very interesting tool. Okay, this talks about 3 columns or 3 attributes: mistakes, experiments, and practices. So those are the 3 towers. I can make a mistake in my work. I might be doing some experiments. I might be doing some practices. Good or bad is a different story, but I could be doing some practices. And then the outcome can be failure on the left-hand side, and the outcome can be successes, right? So this is the tool which is coming from Management 3.0. And you can, by the way, use it for retrospective also. So this tool can also be applied for your conducting your sprint retrospectives or your release retrospectives. This is one of the excellent tools which is there. So it will capture your mistakes, experiments, and practices, and then it will help you to capture which of this is a mistake, which of this is a failure, which of this is an experiment, which of this is a practice and a success. So let me explain this. Actually, this tool is not black and white. It is a color coded tool. And let me explain you what are the colors in this tool. So it is not a black and white tool which is there. It's a color coded tool which will help you to capture the various attributes. So this is how the tool operates. So there's a green, there are 4 colors in this tool, as you can see: green, red, yellow, and gray, right? 4 colors which you can see on this tool. Okay, so I have labeled these regions A, B, C, D, E, F. I mean, this is not what I have done, of course. This is what it is coming from the Management 3.0 framework where these tools are coming. So each person is given a sticky note, and each person is first supposed to write down mistakes. Okay, each person is supposed to write down mistakes which they have committed. Each person is supposed to write down what experiments you have committed, what experiments you have conducted, and what are the practices you have established, or what are the practices you have worked upon as a part of this exercise. So if you look at the green shaded boxes, the green parts are the potential celebration areas. So things which you have done and which have resulted in basically celebration. For example, I did an experiment and it succeeded. So I had a spike story and it actually got succeeded in the sprint, right? So that will come here. That will come here in the B quadrant. Or I'm doing things in a right way. I'm applying test-driven development. I'm applying BDD techniques. I'm applying, let us say, automation. My automation coverage is healthy. So that will come in practices. So those are the right practices what you are using. So what we have here is basically B is things which went well. I mean, experiments which were successful. C is because I'm using the right processes, because I'm applying the right set of techniques, things are really working well for me, right? So that is the right processes which are leading to success. E are things which completely failed, which miserably failed, but basically we learned a lot from it. See that curve at the bottom, that learning curve is very limited. It is in that middle experiment, right? The maximum depth of that learning bucket is in the middle tower, what you see. Okay, so that is in the middle tower, what you see, the learning bucket, what we have there. Okay, let's look at the D column. The other areas are gray and red. So let us look at the D column. D column is some major blunder you did, and there is no learning in that. I think there was a question, right? What if I'm doing repeated failure? So there could be situations where I did a major blunder. Let's say I did shift delete, and I delete some of the configuration file or rm-f command in Unix. I did that. I mean, there is no excuse for that, right? I mean, that's a blunder. That's a blunder which I have done. There is no learning. I mean, I have to be careful, right? I have to be careful, right? I mean, I don't do that blunder when I'm transferring money, right? I don't transfer it to a wrong account, right? But then why I'm making a blunder here? So definitely there's something wrong. Am I not concentrating at work, or I'm not focusing at work? So that is what will come in D. And if you have got too many items in D, that means there is some problem, and you'll have to work on with, let us say, working on your softer skill. So D is definitely a non-excusable blunder. Okay, but F is a bad luck. F is a bad luck, right? When you applied all the good practices, but still you failed. Okay, you still failed in that. So that F column, if you see, that is a bad luck, because in spite of applying the right set of practices, you failed. Ideally, you should have succeeded, but you failed in that initiative. So the other areas which are colored in gray and red are where we didn't learn or have a positive outcome. Their meanings are region F is that many times even good practices fail, right? Even if I might be the best team in the world, on one particular bad day, my luck runs out, and basically I lose to even a minnows team, right? This we have seen many times happening, right? Even the best of the best teams, they lose a match when the day is not theirs, right? So yeah, so that is basically F what we have, right? And then if you look at this another column, the middle tier column, experiments which failed, but at least the experiments which failed, there is a lot of learning out of it, right? There is at least some degree of learning which is coming out of that experiments. So the middle tower is at least giving you some learning around it, right? Failed, but you are learning from it. D, of course, is non-excusable, because what we said is that D is a blunder. Now, sometimes you also, I mean, as they say, right? I mean, my luck is, lady luck is really striking me rich, right? A also happens. What is A? You actually did a mistake, but actually you end up becoming successful person. I mean, that experiment was successful, right? I mean, this is sometimes also called as fluke. This is also sometimes called as fluke, right? Although sometimes, very rarely it happens. Mistakes surprise us with unexpected success, right? I mean, that's what happened with Archimedes, I think, right? I mean, when he found the very famous Archimedes principle, right? I mean, luckily, luckily by the sleight of hand, you could find that golden success rule, even though you have committed a mistake. But the moot point to look here is the bottom layer. If you look at the bottom layer, the learning is very, very minimal. In this zone, there is no learning. In this zone, also the learning is minimal. The learning, what we see, is very, very minimal in this zone. Whatever learning we have, that is in the middle portion, which is there. So that's where there has to be a culture of experimentation. There has to be a culture where the team experiments, creates some solutions, and even if those solutions do not work out, they learn from those solutions. So that is the middle layer, what we have, or the middle layer of what we call as the experimentation layer. And that's why they say encourage acts of experimentation. So you have to make sure that experiments are conducted at a periodic level to make sure that we learn from those experiments, either success or failure, but we learn out of it. So my 2 cents will be, please use this tool. You can also use it for retrospective. I mean, those of you who have not used this tool, or if you are seeing this tool for the first time, please use this tool also for your retrospective. It will give you some fabulous results. It will give you some fabulous insights into how exactly it is coming out, right? How exactly the results are coming out. And as it is, as we all know, right, our team members get bored from retrospective, right? They feel that retrospective is a waste of time. So it is always better to introduce some new tools like this in order to bring about that culture of experimentation or celebrate failure. And the name is aptly called as celebration grid. This will help you decide what are, so typically we celebrate A, B, C and E. A, B, C, E, and F is what we celebrate. D is not what we celebrate. Okay, because D is a blunder that has to be looked upon from a different perspective. Again, I'm not saying that you have to reprimand that person, you have to shout at that person for D. But as a coach, if at all you're finding that there are too many items which are sticking in D, then definitely you will need to have a one-on-one coaching with that person or with that team. If the team is having too many items which are coming out because of blunder and it is repeating again and again, then definitely you will need a focused coaching with the team to handle this situation which is coming out of D. All right. One last thing before I open up the floor for question, some literature around it. I would strongly recommend you to read this book. It is by Dhruv Avdesh. He's an Indian author, And he has given all Indian personalities example about how these personalities overcame their initial failure to succeed in life. So I won't reveal the names of the personalities. You can read this book, Celebrating Failure by Dhruv Avnish. And I don't know how many of you know, there's an Institute of Brilliant Failures, which trains people how to fail, how to apply the failure in a controlled environment, how to go about and prepare the team for the repercussions of failure. There's a website available for this institute. I just happened to Google it and find about this institute, which is called as Institute of Brilliant Failures. They have all the tools and techniques to fail in a controlled environment, and most importantly, learn out of those failures, right? So on that note, I open the floor for questions. If there are any questions anyone has. And yeah, before I open the floor for questions, feel free to connect with me, right? So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, Agile Coaching and Transformation Leadership. Do subscribe to the channel. You will get 90 plus videos. In fact, the content daily keeps on updating there. So soon we will be touching 100 videos there. So there will be, expect something great coming out there. So do subscribe to the channel. The YouTube channel. It really helps us to build content, right? And I'm also pinging you the link of the YouTube channel. So if interested, do ping, do connect to the channel. And subscribe to the channel. It's free subscription, and I'm sure you will learn a lot of things from it. Yeah, so that is what I wanted to talk about it. As you know, right, I usually keep a talk of only 35-40 minutes and give an opportunity for people to ask questions. So anyone, any questions, feel free to ask. So yeah, you can unmute yourself now, and you can type in the questions in the chat box. Yeah, so those of you who are on Zoom, and if you can come on camera while asking a question, that would really be great. Yeah, anyone, any questions here?
Hi, Ashish, Ranjit here.
Hi, Ranjit. Yeah.
Hi. So this looks good, and maybe we. But do you think that it also would depend on the where do we implement this celebration, failure of celebration, and what kind of a status or what kind of a phase the project is? Meaning, currently, is it in a critical phase? Is it it's already in a red? Red green. If you amber kind of phases, right? Do you think that we can apply this in all such phases of the project, or only probably when it is green you try out this, because you still are in controlled environment that you're talking about? But if it's probably already in red, you don't want to take that risks of trying out new things and then go bad, right? Again in a different direction. What do you think?
Yeah. So if you ask me, this is more required for a red project rather than for an amber or a green project.
Okay.
That's where you need it most, right? Which is where we would like to apply it most. If my project is green, why do I need to celebrate failure? Things are going on well, right? Actually, I need it when my project is in a deep brick red color, I would say.
Right, but see, when it's already in red, people don't want to try out new things or take risks, right? Usually because it's already in red, maybe my boss would not want to try out new things. Like, go just do what I say, or just follow the process and stuff like that. I was just thinking in that direction.
So have you seen that very famous picture where they're trying to pull a cart with square wheels? Have you seen that picture? No, you have not seen that picture. Let me show you. Let me see if I can show you that picture. So there's a very interesting picture. So they show people actually having a cart. Okay, and the suggestion is that you should replace the cart with round wheels. Okay, the cart with round wheels, and then they say we don't have time. Then they say no, we don't have time. I think you're talking the same example. You're talking about the same example which is there. So basically, see, if you're continuing to do something wrong, right? If you're continuing to do something in a very improper or an inefficient way, the results are going to be inefficient, right? So that's what I was saying. Let me try to see if I can show you that picture quickly, what I'm referring to, and just give me a minute. Yeah, I think I should be able to show that picture. I had it luckily with me, and let me zoom it. So I think you're talking about something similar. Wait a minute, I'll just show it to you. Yeah, I think this is the picture. I know the resolution is not great. See this. This is exactly the same case what you're talking about. Can you see the picture?
Yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
So if my project is in deep red and if my leader is saying I don't have time, then forget it, right? Get out of that coaching engagement. Your coaching is not required there because these people are not even willing to listen.
Right,
Right. So,
right.
so basically that's what I was trying to tell, right? In fact, this is more needed for a deep red project than for a green project. If you ask me personally, my view.
Right. Yeah, one more question. So maybe how do you have any tips or suggestions? How could you, convince the management to first time implement this kind of a initiative in the organization wherever you're coaching? I mean, do you have any suggestions? I mean, like, how did you really convince it? Isn't it that tough to kind of, maybe even some of them would have probably even laughed at? I don't know. I'm just kind of,
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
yeah.
you yourself will be ridiculed when you say something
Right,
like this in a
exactly,
meeting, right?
exactly.
So
Yeah,
you have to start small.
right.
Don't go for a big bang approach. Start small.
Mm.
Take one small area of the team. Take one small area of the team. Try to implement it. Then try to scale it up. So this also has to be done in an incremental manner rather than in a big bang waterfallish approach. This is something which has to be done in a very small pieces. You take, maybe you take a safe to, you first identify the safe to fail area where you can recover back quickly, right? From where you can quickly recover back and then apply it there and then come out of it. That is what I would recommend.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Ashutosh. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, anyone else? Any questions? You can also type it in the chat box. I mean, if you're okay, you can also type it in the chat box. So I'll be more than happy to pick it up from there. How to tackle repetitive failures on the same route? As I said, right, that might be bordering the blunder. Sorry, yeah. That might be closer to the blunder which are there. That requires a special kind of a one-on-one coaching session. Yeah. Any other question? Yeah, I do see there are questions on LinkedIn Live. Yeah.
Ashutosh, Nitin here. So, just before this, we were talking that when to actually apply that. Somebody asked this question, correct? Exactly. So my just ask is, or you can guide me. Is it possible, or is it a good way that after the major milestone, it's greenly delivered, but you do the exercise with the core group and or maybe a whole group, that let them exercise all their failures and how they came up, so that that can be recorded and it can be actually carry forward in future, so that they don't do the same kind of mistake again.
No, you are talking about retrospective. You're not talking about celebrating failure.
No. So first we kind of doing this exercise. I remember the second tool, I think, which you shared, correct, where we are actually collecting the information like a storytelling, correct, who is actually giving the best information about their failure. Correct. we avoid
Correct.
them we avoid them, but this activity we will be doing at the end of the first major milestone. I'm just
That's what
checking.
I'm saying. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. You already got the disease and you're trying to cure it, right? Rather, why not do it before and prevent the disease from coming in? It's like saying that, okay, after getting COVID, I will start using mask. It is like saying that, no, that let me get COVID for the first time and then only I will use mask. See, again, I'm saying the efficacy of this experiment will lose if you do it. See, you're trying to take a very safe step here, right? That let me not do it. Let me first roll out. See what about the failures in those milestones? Failure is celebrating failure is a continuous journey. It is not a yearly award. Okay, this is not like an Oscar award which I get it at the end of the year. This I might get it every week.
Oh,
The
okay,
best
okay.
failure story in the week. What I'm trying to tell, it need not be an elaborate award like I mean, the trophy looks very elaborate, I understand, but
Yeah.
this could be a weekly award also which I give, right? That's what I'm saying. If you're waiting for the milestone and a release, you're trying to take a very safe bet here, I would say. As a coach, you are playing it very safe, I would say.
Okay. I got it. Thank you.
I mean, that's my viewpoint. If you ask me personally.
No, that's right. That's absolutely right. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions anyone has? Okay. All right. Yeah, let me see on. Yeah, I think there are some questions on LinkedIn live, but of course, those I can take up only when I look at later. Obviously, I can't take it right now with them. Drawbacks of these tools. Yeah, I mean, over reliance of tool is always a problem, right? Over reliance of tool is always a problem. So even you have to use tools very cautiously. I think that was one of the questions which was asked on LinkedIn live. Okay. Okay, then if there are no further questions, I think then we are good to close the session. Do subscribe to my channel. Do connect with me on LinkedIn if we are not connected. It was once again wonderful to talk with all of you. So thanks a lot, and have a great week ahead. Yeah, happy weekend to all of you. Bye for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. Thank you
Abhishek.
very much.
Same
Have
to
a
you.
great
Thank
weekend.
you.
Thanks. Yeah, welcome.